All right, here we go. Another episode of the Professional Casual Fans here. We are official now. We have a great producer who's now doing thumbnails. He's going to get us on TikTok. He's going to do all the stuff that we don't want to do because he's actually good at it, number one. And number two, we're kind of embarrassed to try. So thank you, Monsieur Ryan.
Yes.
Big championship weekend yesterday. We had, I'd say, two games. Maybe one didn't surprise with the outcome, but two games surprising how they went down. I think it was two surprising, what's the word? Evolution, I guess, how events played out in either of these games, because they did not turn out the way I thought they would, either of them. I'll open up the stage to you boys.
We got two completely different games on like totally different spectrums. A defensive battle in the bank, and then in San Francisco in Candlestick. Is it still Candlestick out there?
Levi Stadium.
Oh damn! I like Candlestick. Candlestick was such a good name, but in Levi. In those Levi's, sponsored by Brett Favre, you got a shootout, basically. I mean, in the first half, a stomping by one side. Not a shootout, technically, because, like, it wasn't ever, like, back and forth, both offenses. But, like, one half, the Lions were rolling. The next half, the 49ers were rolling. So, it was interesting to watch. It was a fun weekend for me, at least. Because, 2-0, baby!
Redemption tour.
Redemption.
He still chose the Steelers to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
I did.
That.
But that was fans. That was fans. If the Commanders were in there, you gotta get with the boys.
We're not that delusional. Yeah, I went 0-2.
Well, so you gotta hope
it was
and pray.
A dark weekend for me.
Gotta
personally.
hope and pray. Even my backup option didn't make it out of the first round, so it's all good.
Ryan, your initial thoughts on the games this weekend?
I mean, Chiefs Ravens is just never bet against Patrick Mahomes, because you never know what he can get done. But at the same time, never bet in favor of Lamar Jackson during the playoffs, because he could not. Now, to be fair, Zay Flowers had his hand in it, but to put that much load on a rookie in the fucking championship game, I mean, I think that's telling in and of itself. But I mean, Jared Goff in that Lions game really gave it everything he had, and this Reynolds had a couple crucial drops. Amon-Ra had that one drop, and obviously Dan Campbell, just terrible coaching. But yeah, I guess those are my initial takeaways.
I think you had 3 out of 4 coaches who had bad days. I think Kyle Shanahan got bailed out by Dan Campbell's even worse coaching decisions. Props to Dan Campbell, though, for standing by his strategy. I respect that at the end of the game, and kind of just said that's part of the gig.
We respect the hell out of it.
And I can get. Here's a fun fact, actually. Not a fun fact if you're a Lions fan, I guess. Michael Badgley had not attempted an outdoor kick this season. So I can see why there was a hesitancy to trust him with which was not a, gimme field goal. Like, on the surface, it seemed like there's no doubt. But I think, number one, that offense was rolling. They also should have converted on that if Reynolds just catches it. There's 2 passes that he catches, and we're talking about the Lions in the Super Bowl. And also, so, like I was saying, Kyle Shanahan gets bailed out by bad decision making, and by just mistakes made by the Lions, and by one of the most ridiculous plays I've ever seen that should have been an interception on that long ball by Brock, and Ayuk somehow ends up with it.
It should have been an interception, or it should have just been batted down. If he didn't try to intercept that ball, we could be talking about the Lions in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's just a lot of bad luck. And I mean, you knew Detroit was going to end up doing something Detroit at some point, and they just Detroited harder than they've ever Detroited in their entire lives. Yeah. So, And how about Dan Campbell just going all doomsday on the team afterwards, saying this.
Be back here. This is the end.
I hope you enjoyed this, boys, because we're never going here again.
Can you imagine how demoralizing that must be? Looking at the man, who I'm sure most of them blame him, because it's like, all right, you made some pretty dumb decisions, and he's the one being like, yeah, we're never coming back here. I hope you guys know that.
Here's the thing, though. I think they love him, and I think they respect him for, like, I don't know if you saw Jared Goff basically saying, like, he believed in us, and, like, that's what we wanted. And like I said, I think a huge factor in this that he wasn't talking about was he did not trust Michael Badgley to make that field goal. I think that was the biggest thing. And, I mean, you saw how that Buffalo game went. Maybe that was in the back of his mind. Much different weather conditions. But bad coaching on either side. I don't trust Kyle Shanahan in the Super Bowl at all. Brock Purdy, like I said, got very lucky on that pass. That changed the game completely.
Brock had a great game, though.
After that pass, he did.
After that pass,
also, there was that one early. I mean, there was a couple early on where he was scrambling. There was
and
one
he was
Juszczyk. It was one of the best passes I've ever seen. And he like ran around, and then he goes, and Juszczyk is on the sideline and like toe taps it. And so you can't knock Brock.
I'm not knocking Brock. I'm just saying there was before that pass and after that pass were two totally different games.
Yeah.
And Detroit just had nothing to stop the momentum after that point. Ravens Chiefs is I don't know if you can ever bet against Patrick Mahomes again. I don't know how. Me personally, I think I was too stupid to see that they are just the new Patriots. Like they had the exact same story arc that the Patriots have of, maybe they're done. Maybe this is the year that they kind of have a down year. And then they find their magic. They realize, hey, this ball only needs to go to 3 people. And then we'll win. They had 2 drives that entire game that were productive. And they were the 2 touchdown drives, and that's all they needed. Yep. And props to Mike McDonald, who second half just completely like shut down and out adjusted Andy Reid, which is a huge statement on him. And I really want him to be the Commanders' next head coach. But that Ravens defense stood tall. I think a big portion of this blame for that loss goes on Todd Monken. They really abandoned the run game real fast. But, I mean, yeah, the conversation, I think this is what I was leading to, goes to Lamar Jackson, who did reach the AFC Championship game. But there is a conversation to be had about where he can take this team and was this their last best chance in the Jackson era?
Oh, I'm excited. I have never been happier as a Steelers fan after yesterday.
Because it's officially a thing now. Playoff Lamar is officially a thing after yesterday. He completely folded.
Yeah. Like, once again, he put up 270. The stats, if you look at the stats, you could get fooled. Because he put up like 270-some yards, had a touchdown. The stats, you could get fooled.
All you need to look at is that pass to Isaiah Likely in the triple fucking coverage.
You could montage how many times they zoomed in on this man walking off the field, and he's just looking like in shambles, or he's just frustrated or angry, throwing helmets and shit. Like when your quarterback is doing all that, like you're in deep trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say for the beginning of that game, I don't think he was tight. I think when the Chiefs came out right away and scored, he was immediately panicked. And I think you immediately saw, like, in the second half, there was a lot of, like, the happy feet in the back of in the pocket, which is, like, what you kind of used to see from Lamar. And, like, the happy feet, like, kind of, like, jumping around, holding the ball forever, and then taking sacks. And it's like it needs to be like reinforced with him. Like when you see plays breaking down and no one's coming open, you are the best weapon on the field. Run. they're not going to catch up to you.
I think there's like a point they were trying to make that Lamar could win this by throwing, by just single-handedly shooting out Mahomes. He can outperform him in a throw the ball only type game, and like you got to use your legs. That's your best weapon if you're Lamar Jackson. And the fact that I know they weren't calling run plays and all, but when you're back there, he never took off. And the one like read option early in that game, 4th and 1, we were talking about this last night. I think Lamar of like 2-3 years ago takes that to the house. Like, I don't know what was happening, but he looked like the slightest step might have been lost after those couple years of injuries, because I feel like an old Lamar takes that to the house.
Yeah, my only thing with that is it felt like if you look at he keeps it when he's running now, it's like running very hesitantly. Like he's like constantly looking around, constantly like trying to see if he needs to slide, like afraid he's going to get hit. And I think that's what stops him from like going just like hitting it. Because I think if he does hit it, he's gone. But like you said, maybe it is something that he just doesn't have anymore. But I mean, the bottom line is like play your game. Like you're the number 1 seed. You were the best rushing team in the league, and you have been for like the past 5 years. Run the ball. Like Gus Edwards had that one run for like 15 yards, and then they just never went back to him. And it's like, especially after what you saw Buffalo do to them last week, do it again. Like, just because you go down, like, especially when they tied the game, it's like, okay, just, like, play your game. Don't get panicked. And I think that's what it was. It was like there was this panic. There was pushing it down the field. And none of it encapsulates the whole thing more than the interception in the end zone. And he's throwing into triple coverage. He's forcing the ball when there was no need to. All you needed on that drive was a field goal, and you were in business. And you know, just that everything, like it was just so, they just really showed their green, I'm trying to think of the word, they showed their inexperience. Like, which is, you know, like that.
And it wasn't it's Lamar wasn't the only immature one. You got to put it on Zay, too, for that taunting penalty. That hurt him. You know, and
even
Davion
a lot of
Clowney
defensive stuff,
blatant
too.
roughing the passer. Yeah. It's like, all right, boys, you guys got to lock it down a little bit.
Kyle Van Noy headbutting Kelsey out at, like, I know they were chirping the whole time, but you can't come in there. You can't, like, just hit him with a straight helmet to helmet out of nowhere. I know it wasn't, like, the biggest, like, thing, but he does, like, lean in and slam his helmet into his chin.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of. And also, at the same time, it's like they're not idiots. It's like, Van Noy, you know that is Travis Kelce. You know that will be called. You know that's Patrick Mahomes. You know that will be called. It's like you got to use your head.
And like Van Noy,
he did.
You were a part of that Patriots. You know, big situations. You don't fucking get penalties. That was the main thing in New England. When we are in big games, we don't get penalties.
Yeah, I think they were kind of all year like used to being the big dogs.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were just like getting on everybody. And honestly, this game was no different. But like they just like the stupid penalties, like you said, and like how many times. I think that's like a result of like so close getting to Mahomes and then him getting rid of the ball. You kind of get frustrated. You make those dumb decisions. They ended up getting to him like 2 or 3 times in the second half.
Yeah, which he had tackled.
And you know, it was just stupid mistakes, man. Like the Ravens handed the Chiefs that game. Like that's it was the second half was completely owned by the Ravens. Like the Chiefs didn't move the ball besides that one drive.
I don't know how much, like, I know the Ravens defense is fantastic and all, but I don't know like how much like Kansas City wasn't really trying to do much. It felt like in the second half. Like
the game was not over. That game, like
I know it wasn't over, but they were smacking them on like their defense had them locked up. I don't think they felt threatened ever in that game, really.
I don't know, because I would say that if the Chiefs were just.
I'm
saying like
that game ever got tied. Sorry, there's a delay. So.
It's all good. If the Chiefs really were not trying, if they were like happy to like just rest on their laurels and just let their defense go to work, number one, like the Ravens were moving the ball kind of at will. Like they were down in the red zone 2 times. There's an argument. Like I said, that game should have been like the Ravens should have taken the lead, and they were like the Chiefs were passing the ball a lot, which leads me to believe they knew they needed to score. But the Ravens' defense is, I mean, you gave up 17 points to Mahomes and Kelsey. You should win that game. So, but for as good as they were, we got to talk about the Chiefs' defense for just, holding it down. And like they did exactly what every Ravens fan said, like was no longer Lamar's weakness when they were like, he can throw from the pocket now. And it's like, and they made him do that. And granted, I will say it looked better. And like he was, moving the ball, but it's just the holding the ball and holding the ball and holding the ball. It's like, dude, you got to make a decision. And they need to make, like, this is where Todd Monken comes into play. He wasn't making it easier. Like, I feel like he went so far off of what they were winning with that it was like that the team was almost like trying to adapt to an entire new offensive scheme on the fly. And you could see like a big sign. I mean, me and Brian saw this. There was that one play where he took a sack and Zay Flowers is wide open.
Wide open. It was insane.
And I think he was hesitant to throw it down the field after the interception. And, his deep balls were kind of off. Like that, the pass.
You can't blame that on Todd Monken. That's Lamar. He schemed him open. I mean, Zay couldn't have been more open.
Yeah.
That's on Lamar.
Yeah, they were just all way off. And, yeah, I mean, it's hard to walk away from this thing and not think, where does it go from here? I won't put them in the situation. I do think they are getting into, I saw today, somebody did compare them to the Sixers, where it's like with Joel Embiid, there's all this talk about how great he is in the regular season, and then in the postseason, he kind of comes up short. And we'll see this year. But, it's the
man wearing the 76.
The parallels are very similar. I mean, not too similar because the Ravens got past the second round, but
but they had a bye, and
they still got
a rookie quarterback.
They still won. Sixers have done less. Sixers got to play the Atlanta Hawks in the second round, and they somehow fumbled that bag. So you got to give credit where credit is due. But yeah, I mean it's one of those things now where I feel like Ravens fans don't want to talk about it, but it's like, yeah, I mean there's a big question mark here. Like it's like he needs to figure this out. Like this was probably the best team he's ever going to have, because I'm going to guess they're going to lose their defensive coordinator. Odell Beckham isn't getting any younger, and I don't think he's going to be back. Mark Andrews isn't getting any younger. And, yeah, like I just don't know where it goes from here.
Yesterday, when we were watching that game, it didn't feel like it was happening. Like there was like a genuine disbelief. Because at some point, Cole, even you said this when we were playing Fortnite, it was like a foregone conclusion. Like the Ravens have this one in the bag, right? Like especially after that Christmas game where they pounded the 49ers. It was like, all right, it's going to be hard to beat this Ravens team. So to have all of that and to have it be like, they got this one in the bag. That Baltimore crowd was off the rails. And to just have a game like that, it's just deflating. You know what I mean? And like that more than anything, I think, a lot of question marks going into this offseason.
Yeah. It always lingers in my head whenever you got Lamar going out there in the playoffs. I know that last game, he shut up the doubters with the 4-touchdown performance, but again, defense did a lot of work in that game. Short fields.
They only threw for like 150.
Yeah, only threw for 150, had 2 touchdowns, but they weren't like big splashy play touchdowns. They were like later in the game, they were like dink and dunks in the red zone. It wasn't no big type time plays. It was like pretty handedly they were going to beat the Texans because that defense was not allowing the Texans to move at all. Kansas City comes out there, smacks the Ravens in their face on the first drive, scoring a touchdown. First, they hold them to 3 and out on the Ravens' first drive. and then go down and smack him right in the face with his store. And it was like, after that, it felt like the whole game plan was out the window. They like went to like shootout mentality. We're going to throw this ball. And, you know, the last time Lamar threw more than 37, he threw 37 pass attempts this game. Last time he had 37 plus pass attempts, it was 38 against the Steelers in week 3. And they lost 17-10.
Damn. Wow, there's poetry.
Yeah.
You guys know Cole's a Steelers fan? You guys know that?
No, it's just a stat. It's just a stat. You don't want Lamar throwing more than 30 times. You don't want him. You don't want Lamar you don't want that being your number one option.
Now, like in an ideal world, yeah, I mean, the Ravens calling card over the past few years, and it hasn't worked, is the running game. And this year they modified it to where he was still, they were still running the ball the best in the league, but he was throwing it at a decent clip too, and throwing it very efficiently. And yeah, they completely went away from that. I thought after that touchdown pass he had, like that is what he is at his best. That play where he escapes the sack and he just tosses it up, and Flowers is right there. I thought after that I was like, okay, they're going to just roll it from here. Like, I thought if they stopped the Chiefs on the next drive, it was over. Like, the Ravens were going to be able to take that one. But obviously that's not what happened. The buddy ball between Mahomes and Kelsey early on was strong. And, you know, like, they had a very simple game plan. It was just like, I'm throwing it to you, get open, and we're going to move down the field. And at some point, too, you just have to talk about, like, with Mahomes, like, we talk about Lamar and his problems, but guess what? He's not the only quarterback in the AFC that we're talking about in this light. Josh Allen, like everybody, it just seems like Patrick Mahomes just finds a way. It's like him and everybody else, because it's like we're talking about how he just ends up sending these guys home one way or another. And, you know, it's honest. Yeah. And, yeah, it kind of reminds me to a more extreme extent, I feel like with when LeBron first went to Miami, and I was like in high school, and I remember there was like this point where I was like, I hated LeBron just because it was like he left Cleveland, and it felt like he just sold his soul to go down there. And I was super happy when Dirk and the Mavericks beat them. And then he goes back and should have lost to San Antonio. And then, or no, he beats OKC, and then they beat San Antonio. But then he goes back to Cleveland, right, and he becomes a hero again. But it was one of those things where I remember thinking, like, it was such a foregone conclusion for like a decade that it was a team in the West and LeBron James in the NBA Finals. Like, there was no question. Like, it was like, as a Sixers fan, as a fan of any other team, it was like there's nobody beating him. Like, he's getting there somehow. And it's like at some point, like, you had to, like, appreciate, like, this is something crazy. Like, I don't know if we'll ever see a player like this again, like this dominant. Probably. Like, as dominant as Michael Jordan was, he, like, I think LeBron went to, like, a 8 straight finals or something. Like, that's ridiculous. And some of the teams he brought with him. Anyway, my whole point is, like, it's like you're looking at Mahomes right now, and you're like, geez, like, it's just, what is this, his fourth Super Bowl now? You know, and he's still only, like, 28 years old or something. Like, he's crazy. So,
yeah. Strong,
you know.
Strong start.
Yeah, and I think I will get to that a little bit more, I guess, about that Niners-Lions game, but I don't see the Niners winning that game. After what I've seen from them in 2 playoff games?
Oh, no. I don't. The line's already out. The Chiefs are already underdogs, so that means the bowl's wraps. Like, you don't make the Chiefs underdogs. They only win in the playoffs when they're underdogs, it feels like. They've been underdogs against the Bills and now the Ravens, and I mean, look who's standing.
Yeah, they're the ones. Remember the Eagles were wearing those dog masks? Like, the Chiefs should be breaking out the dog masks. I love that. Like, all the underdogs, it's like, and they're sitting at they were the 1 seed, and it's like they're playing the part of, like, oh, do you not realize why you're because you have a backup quarterback playing? That's why you're the underdogs. I get it's like motivation, but it's like this. Honestly, this Super Bowl, Ryan was saying this earlier, is like the Eagles' worst nightmare. Like the Eagles fan worst nightmare because all this season,
worst possible outcome. Yeah.
This entire season.
Chiefs beat you last year. You said the 49ers couldn't possibly get here. And it was like,
all this season, like calling the Niners, saying they have sour grapes. These fans don't know it. Like it's like, oh, you lost in the NFC Championship game. Deal with it. You deal with it. You play with the cards you're dealt. And it's like they lost both of their quarterbacks on their roster. You don't think that was like a little bit of a uneven playing field there? They had no quarterback.
There was a point in that game where while Brock Purdy is injured and cannot throw, they didn't have an option. So they put fucking Brock Purdy back on the field.
Just to hand it off. Yeah.
Yes, that ass is we can hand it to CMC.
Yeah. And they don't understand why the Niners, like, players are like, wish they had a fair shake. And then all this season, the Niners are just like, we can't wait to play them. And then they go into Philly and blast them. And that's honestly, that's where the Eagles season, took a, But so I'm kind of happy for the Niners in a way for that because I think they kind of deserve this, like to get there and to kind of have this feeling of like exoneration. And I'm happy for Brock, man. Like it's like all he's heard all year is how they're winning in spite of him, and it's cool to see that he was the one who kind of pulled them.
Yeah. Really shut those people up. Everyone that was like, hey, he's never had a comeback win. What happens? Well, you're not going to get to the Super Bowl in low-pressure situations. And guess what? In two of the highest pressure situations, he's come back and won. So, at this point. And, like, he might not have had the best first halves in all those games. But, like, I remember Tom Brady. Like, that man would shit the bed for a whole half. There's a reason you lead the league in all-time comeback victories. It's because you shit the bed in the first half. So there is a lot of times I remember Tom Brady.
He's like, Tom Brady kind of sucked if you really
No, don't. I don't like Tom. Tom was the first Lamar for me. I don't like Tom.
Yeah, the funniest thing to me though is like you talk to any like Ravens fan over the age of like 40, and every single one of them will be like, I mean, like I was talking about Mahomes saying like I think he's even 10 times the crybaby that Brady ever was, and they're always like, "Oh, Brady was another level." I'm like, Brady was not that big of a crybaby. I don't know, like what you're.
Brady was a bitch.
Dude, he was the one out there saying earlier this year. He was saying like, stop complaining about these defensive like helmet to helmet calls, or stop giving it to him
because he's out of the league now. When he was
talking about how he
fall to the ground.
It's learning how to fall.
All right, freeze frame. We're going to take that and put that all over the internet.
That's the thumbnail right there. That is the thumbnail this week.
That's what would happen. I'm sorry. But I remember Tom. Tom was the worst. That man got every call. You touch him, he'd be like, Mr. Raff, babes, come on. And they'd be like, okay.
My thing is, and this is really just based off that one play, but it's like with Mahomes, like you lose that game to Buffalo off of a clear offsides, like a clear offsides.
Yeah, no, that was a bitch move. That was a bitch move.
And then you go up and Josh Allen is basically like, "Hey man, good game," and you say to him, "We got ripped off." It's like you lost, man. Like even if you score that touchdown, the Bills get the ball back. So it's like how much time was left at that point? I think it was like a minute or something.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong on that. Yeah, but it was just like such a, and it's like, dude, are you really one to talk?
Brady was known for like.
Yeah, but you got to remember, Brady's also if we're going to like people's toots after games they lose, Brady's the guy that wouldn't even shake players' hands after losing to him.
He would just book it to the locker room. Fitzpatrick talked about that a lot, where he would just leave.
Yeah.
Well, he did that in like both Super Bowl or like every Super Bowl he lost. I'm pretty sure he was off the field real quick. Like.
Yeah. He never shook Nick Foles' hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I honestly,
and that's just, I mean, it is a
gotta
level of
emotionally
competitor
understand
those
that.
guys are at, though, where like
you gotta like
they're just
imagine
like
if you
so
lost.
into it that it's like fuck.
Dude, if I lost
And
a game of
Mahomes was
beer
probably
pong to a guy that looked like Nick Foles, I wouldn't shake his hand. Are you serious? Look at him. He's like, I feel like I fucking lost to this guy. He's like, I can't show my face around
I know.
here.
It's wild that the two quarterbacks that beat him are fucking Eli Manning and Nick Foles. Like, that is just a wild. Like, look at all the other ones. Like, oh my god, all the other teams he beat in the bowl. And
who else he beat?
Nick Foles.
He beat Jake Delhomme. He beat Jake Delhomme. He beat Mahomes. He beat Donovan McNabb.
Ryan.
He beat Matt Ryan. He beat Jared Goff. He beat Eli. No, who else did he beat? I got
Isn't
5.
it weird to think Jared Goff has been to the Super Bowl? Is that like weird for anybody else to think about? It's like, damn.
No. He
beat Russell Wilson.
That was one McVay was like, yeah, Wilson, and then there's one more. So we got the Panthers.
Oh, he beat
Kurt Warner.
Yeah, Kurt Warner. Yeah, the first one when we were all babies, and Brian wasn't even a thought yet.
I was listing them out, and I was like, the first team, the Rams. I was like, oh, that's the dude we're missing, Kurt Warner.
Yeah, showing our age there a little bit. All right, so a quick question. I brought this up earlier. Was this the Ravens' last best chance with Lamar at quarterback? Considering the AFC.
They're going to be in the playoffs most years. They will be in the playoffs most years. The thing is, will Mahomes have a worse team than this ever? Maybe like the year after Kelsey retires, maybe they got a good chance. But like, I don't see like this team offensively this year hasn't been anything special. The receivers have had a case of dipping their hands in grease before every game. So like, this was the year for any AFC team.
Also, even outside of the Chiefs, the AFC is loaded right now, and it's only getting better. You look at teams like the Texans, the Dolphins, Bengals to an extent. They're all kind of.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think the best team besides Kansas City is Cincinnati. Like, I think that Ravens aren't even. Yeah.
Dog, watch out for Houston next year. $70 million this year in free agent, in cap space for free agency. And why would you not want to join D'Amico and CJ Stroud after this first year?
And also, especially after this game, and it's always been kind of known about Lamar, but this really showed it. He's like, all right, if we'll take our chances making him throw the ball, we'll take our chances. You know what I mean? Like, they're more likely to win the game if they just scheme around him being a pocket passer.
They sent blitzes like the whole time. The Chiefs just were like, we're going to bring the fucking house every play.
Yeah, and he couldn't handle it.
And
of course, that is against, Kansas City's defense is incredible.
So, Cole, is your answer yes, this is their last best chance?
This will be their best chance in a while. Their best, maybe with Lamar ever.
I would say, I don't know. I think they have one more year, but I mean, this was pretty humiliating,
Steelers coming up hot on their tail too.
Yeah, I just think this team, like with all the talent that they had, and like just with the cap the way it is, and the players that are due, like for new contracts or free agents, and age too, like I think this season was like their perfect recipe.
I'm going to take every single dollar that you guys have, and then I'm going to blow my load during the regular season, and then I'm going to do exactly what everybody thinks I'm going to do in the playoff.
Dog, that was another wild stat I saw. Every year Lamar has been to the playoffs, their lowest scoring game of the year was a playoff game.
Yeah. It's tough.
Like, yeah, man.
That is wild.
It is tough.
Yeah, it's it sucks, man. It's one of those I think next year too, like you have to I do think there are things that you can build off of for the Ravens right now. Like I think offensively you're gonna have Monken for another year, so it's always good for a system when like going into a second year under a coordinator. I think there should be a conversation about revolving that offense more around getting the ball to people like Likely. I think he might end up with more touches being better than Andrews. He's faster. He's bigger. Andrews is still great, but I think there's really, like, when you can run like a 12 personnel like that and you're a good running team, like, that's lethal. And
you got one of the best running quarterbacks ever.
Yeah, and like I think Zay Flowers is only going to get better. He was the only guy who, like, I know he had that huge mistake, but it's like he balled out for them. He was the only one getting like open consistently.
And also, I said this earlier, like, they are putting a lot of pressure on him as a rookie wide receiver. You know, he was the only guy that caught a ball besides Lamar Jackson that was wearing a Ravens jersey in that first half. It's like, all right, man, he's a rookie. Maybe pass the ball around a little bit.
That was the person I felt the worst for yesterday.
Yeah.
Not because of the taunting. The taunting was idiotic. You can't just shove. You can't push this man over and then be like, hold my ball. And then,
yeah.
Like, people are getting upset because they're saying Chelsea
threw the
was
ball
showboating the whole game. And it's like, dog, you're only showing the part of the clip where he's flexing. It's like this dude legitimately flipped the dude back onto his back and said, hold the ball.
You know, another thing, though.
There's so many steps he could have stopped. You know what I mean? There's so many times he could have been like, I'm not doing this. He was like, no, I'm going to shove him to the ground, stand up, and then throw the ball at him, and then just stand over him.
Yeah, it's like, what did that man say to you? And then after...
Not even like looking away, just right over the motherfucker, just staring him down.
Yeah.
And then after all that, and Snead ends up getting the last laugh with the fumble, and it's just unreal.
But also, you know, that taunting might have been what gave him the juice to make that play. You know, it might have been like, hey, fuck this guy.
Well, it's all like a domino effect. Like, he has that ball. I think he was down at like the 8-yard line or something like that. So you don't do that. You don't get the penalty. The Ravens probably run it the next down. They're probably at like the 5 at worst, maybe. And then they probably pass it. But you're not setting up for that play where Flowers is trying to dive in. Completely changed the aspect of the game. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about, it's been eating at my mind all day long, and it could be the Achilles heel of that Chiefs team, was how big of a mistake I feel like Andy Reid made at the end, and he gets bailed out by Mahomes making that pass to get the first down anyway. But on the last drive for the Chiefs, and they've run the ball on first down, Pacheco gets 8. It's 2nd and 2. I think it was an offsides call. Or no, too many men on the field for the Ravens. And so then it's 1st and 5. He should have declined that penalty and made the Ravens use a timeout. Because if he declines that penalty, the clock starts to run again. And it's and it's 2nd and 2. He accepts the penalty. It's 1st and 5, and the clock is stopped. And then that's when Roquan Smith gets a bullshit unnecessary roughness call when he just intentionally goes off sides and runs into the guy. They call unnecessary roughness on that. It's like, okay, then you are assuming he did it on purpose if you're going to give him that. That's beyond the fact. Yeah. But
I mean, if he was going to just walk off sides like he did, he probably should have just walked off sides and touched the dude and not just
well, what he didn't want to do is walk off sides, tap the guy, and then Mahomes snaps it, and then he gets a free play.
Yeah, but plays that as soon as you touch the dude. Like, he could have just reached across, patted him on the head.
I think he just wanted to send the message.
I know, he wanted to send a message. Yeah. He was frustrated. Yeah. And he was like, drop the shoulder, lay the boom.
Yeah, but I don't think unnecessary roughness was the wrong call. Like, that was, if there is one call that happened yesterday, it was like, that was a bit of a shafting. It was that one. And the fact that Likely didn't get called for that holding. But
yeah, that was crazy. He was getting mugged.
Yeah, but But yeah, I mean, Andy Reid right there. So say that happens. He accepts that penalty, and then they do that, and it's 1st and 10. The Ravens stop them. The Ravens have a full 2 minutes to get that ball back. And honestly, 2nd and 2, the way Pacheco had been running, he probably gets that 1st down anyway. But it was just one of those things where I was like, man, he really kind of got bailed out there. But, you know, that was my 2 cents. That was eating at me all day. Had to get that one out.
That was huge.
You know, could have played it smarter, but end of the day, didn't really matter for the Chiefs. No one's going to look at that because it didn't affect them when it came down to it. Mahomes hit MVS over the top, which is wild that MVS has had a couple big-time catches at the end of the games, back-to-back weeks now, after people were just like, get rid of him. Get rid of him.
I thought for sure he was going to drop that ball. I thought that thing. I thought he was
for a second.
I thought he was going to hit the ground and that thing was going to pop out. But yeah. So now championship weekend is over. I always say it is the last official weekend of football because the Super Bowl is such a spectacle and all the extra stuff that goes into it. It's barely a football game at all, but still the Super Bowl, and should be a good one. But I don't think it's like the one that everybody thought was going to happen, but everybody's kind of like, really?
I mean, at the beginning of the year, if you had to guess 2 teams, like before the season, a snap happened, these were the 2 teams you were going to guess. And it happened. I mean, I respect good football. It's going to be a good game. It's going to be good football out there, and that's all we can ask for, really, as fans.
Probably
if your team's not in it, you're not happy. Like, that's the story. Like, if your team's not in it, you're not happy. So,
I think if the Lions, if the Lions made it, everybody would have been.
I'd be happy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's some stories that you can get behind, but like when it really comes down to it, most years, most Super Bowl matchups, no one besides the 2 teams are like really that happy about it.
Not every time. Sometimes if you're a Commanders fan, you know from the very first snap of the season that your team has no pipe dream of possibly even making it to the playoffs.
No, I know, but like at the same time, like you see in the 90s, Dallas was running it the whole time. 2000s, the Patriots were there all the time. Like it's just the cycle of life.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how it happens in the league.
Don't forget those Washington Redskins in the 80s, baby.
Yeah. Redskins. You got the Niners in the 80s, Steelers in the 70s. Like, there's always a team that's like clearly the top of the class. There's always a team that's clearly the top of the class, and it's the Chiefs. Like, it's their time, and the 49ers are the top of the class in the NFC.
It's the NFL, baby. It's the biggest spectacle on earth. Everybody loves it. Best league in the world by far. Premier League can shut up, even though it's kind of entertaining. But, yeah. All right, so we got some coaching. What's up?
Oh, not the Niners, Lions? We didn't really cover.
We want to make this a short, boy, because we do have 3 episodes left until the Super Bowl. We got to fill them bitches with something.
We do.
No.
Well, we talked about the Lions a little bit.
Yeah, but there's one thing I want to talk about. I do want to talk about the 4th down decisions real quick. Because there was, like you said, the kicker stat, he hasn't kicked outside. There was another stat that was interesting to me, which made it make a lot more sense why they went for it both times. Going into that week, they were like 18 for 20 year round on like 4th down conversions on the other team's side of the field. So I understand going for it that first time. Like, I understand wanting to put the dagger in, like really twist the knife, tell the 49ers fans to send them packing early. But that second one, you're down 3 late, like go for the tie at that point. Just go, just tie the game up. So if they score, it's not a 2-possession game because there was only like 6 minutes left. You didn't have the most time in the world. Maybe not 6 minutes, but I think it was below 10. So it was just, I don't know. That second one is really the one that bites you in the ass. And also another mishap for Dan Campbell that most people aren't talking about is that he had to use one of his timeouts on that final drive on the 1 yard line because they decided to run it.
That essentially ended the game right there.
Yeah, exactly. Because you got a 4% chance of covering up an onside kick. It's like you're just conceding at that point.
It was just bad. It was just over and over again bad coaching decisions, and the biggest thing there was like, the horrendous clock management at the end of that game. Like just that running the ball there, and then having to use a timeout, and it was like, man, what are we doing here? And it's tough. Those fourth downs, like I said, the offense was moving the ball up and down the field, so it's like I get what he was thinking. But, I mean, in that situation, man, you got to take the points and hope for the best. And
we do respect the live by the sword, die by the sword mentality, though.
Yeah. But, that's something that Detroit is not going to forget for a long time. So I don't think they're.
They don't make it for another 30 years.
They're not. They're a really good team. Like they have really good talent on that offensive side of the ball. It's young, and Jamison Williams is, I think, eventually going to end up become wide receiver. You have two really good receivers, and once he gets fully healthy, like I think he's still kind of recovering from. He's had several injuries. And once, you have those two. And Jahmyr Gibbs looks like the truth. So they'll be very good. That defense needs to get better. I think they will.
Yeah, for sure. Especially that secondary. That secondary is really bad.
That O-line they have is ridiculous.
Yeah. Maybe the best in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, so we do have some coaching stuff. The Commanders have been on a coaching interview frenzy. They, I believe, interviewed Mike McDonald today. And they are going to be, they interview Mike McDonald tomorrow, I believe. And then they're flying out to interview the favorite candidate, offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, Ben Johnson. He has been the top name on their list, I feel like, since they fired Ron Rivera, even kind of before that. I think it's really between him and McDonald. Should be interesting. It shows you how far Washington has come, that they are a destination in which people want to go to, where you were getting the top GM candidate came here, and now maybe the top head coaching candidate as well. And it's interesting, Seattle has not done anything. Like, Seattle could have easily hired their head coach at this point, and they're still, waiting. So it makes you wonder, are they – I think they want either – I think they're very interested in Ben Johnson as well, and McDonald, I think, is also up there for them. So we'll see. Only two vacancies left.
Have you heard the rumors about what might happen if Andy Reid decides to step away this year?
It's Nagy, right? Matt Nagy, they think is going to take his place.
No, I saw something about Belichick.
No, I heard that Matt Nagy was there.
Oh, well, I saw something about Belichick being a possible option, and I was like, no, that is the NFL's worst nightmare.
He can't keep getting away with that.
No. Because with Belichick, fucking Mahomes is way more talented than Brady. Sorry to say it, he is. If you had Belichick, they're winning the bowl every year. Like, it's over.
Dude, imagine having Belichick as a defensive coordinator. Yeah, that would be insane.
They already have a great defense, and he is a defensive coach.
Also, they should not hire Nagy if Reid leaves, because Nagy is a shit coach.
Yeah, I don't know why they would do that. But other news, the Eagles did hire Vic Fangio as their defensive coordinator, and they hired Kellen Moore as their offensive coordinator. So a complete revamping on that side of the ball for the Eagles, or a complete revamping on the coaching staff for the Eagles.
I think this year it really showed those Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen were big parts of that Eagles team, because They left, and they had success. Like, I know Jonathan Gannon, not the most pretty year at like 3-13 or 4-13, whatever it was, but like when they had Dobbs, they were competing in games. When Kyler came back, you saw a spark, and like that team looked like it could possibly do damage. And Steichen had a great year in Indianapolis on the brink of playoffs, and I mean, hey, it was really. I think it showed who the better coaches were out of Sirianni and those two. Like out of all three of them, I think we all know that the Eagles might have had the worst one. Now, so I think it's important to revamp their OC and DC. I like Kellen Moore. I know he had an off year this year with the Chargers, but
he kind of got screwed.
Yeah, exactly.
It was just a bad situation.
It was a shit show. It was a shit show with the head coach. Herbert goes down. You get smacked like 70-3 1 week against the Raiders. and
you're rolling with Easton Stick for your last 5 games, basically.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it's gonna be. I think he'll have a bounce back year with all like the Eagles have good weapons on that offensive side. You shouldn't. If he struggles next year, it will be interesting. But
it'll be interesting to see if he. Yeah, I just think he's old now. Like it's time to retire, man. Like I think they said that players had a hard time relating to him, like on in Miami, because he's like older. Like it's just like
Yeah, I mean, I can totally see that. Like he's been in the league forever. He probably coaches a different way than most people at this point. So it's time to hit the hay.
But I do think they're looking for like some kind of leadership in Philly. Like I think they're looking for somebody who can kind of guide Nick Sirianni, because I think they feel like he might be a little bit more green than they thought he was. No pun intended. But
he just does too much. He just does too much. Like if you're not yelling at fans and shit, their first like couple years would be fantastic.
Yeah, he's just very immature. Like last year in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl where it was that challenge and he's like pointing in the other direction and Jalen Hurts has to like calm him down. It's like, come on, dude.
Wrong.
Yeah, like be better.
I lost that challenge.
It's just, it's not a good look for him, but
But him and Dan Campbell hired in the same year, both had the most hope.
Dan Canyon.
All right, guys. We'll see you guys.
Sorry, I messed up. But Dan Campbell,
we know
they both, when they got hired, had 2 of the funniest press conferences of all time. Like Nick Sirianni just looked lost, and then Dan Campbell was like, "Kneecaps, we're gonna be eating them. We're gonna fall down, bite the kneecap on our way down.
I'm hungry. Give me your kneecaps. I'm going to eat your kneecaps. Give me them." All right, should we call it a wrap?
Yeah, we can call it
right after the kneecaps comment. Let's go.
Kneecaps, I require your kneecaps. All right, give me them kneecaps. It is time. Also, before we log off, Ryan, Cole, get ready to end it like right as soon as I'm done talking.
All right.
Joel Embiid did not duck Nikola Jokic. And if you believe that, you're a fool. It's the Denver altitude. All right, that's it.